Good morning to all of you, and thank you for coming today. My name is Suna Samsami, and I'm the U.S. representative of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, committed to secular and non-nuclear and republic in Iran, a democratic Iran. My colleague, Mr. Fakhrizadeh, will be joining me in this press conference today. What we're going to share with you today draws on information and intelligence obtained by the network of PMOI MEK inside Iran, Mujahideen Khalq inside Iran. Owing to Parchin's extraordinary sensitivity for the regime, MEK compilation of information related to activities at this site started in early 2012 and continued into late October 2014. It has been compiled based on dozens of reports obtained by various sources, including officials, experts, technocrats within a number of regime organizations, including the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, the Organization of Defense Innovation and Research, SPND, as well as military institutions such as the Iranian regime's Ministry of Defense and the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Since 2002, after revealing clandestine sites in Natanz and Iraq by our movement, we have repeatedly warned about the clerical regime's nuclear weapons program. We are keen to prevent the mullahs from obtaining the bomb in the interest of not only the Iranian people, but for the sake of regional and global peace and security. Today's information uncovers a simple truth. The clerical regime is ceaselessly and secretly forging ahead with the military dimensions of its nuclear program, and it has no intention whatsoever of abandoning that program. The persistence of secret activities, the failure to respond to numerous questions about the possible military dimensions of the program, reluctance to provide the IAEA an opportunity to interview the experts involved, and the failure to act in a transparent manner are a testament to this assessment. Through the lifting of sanctions, Tehran would gain greater capacity to make progress on the nuclear front while attempting to implement the rest of its nefarious policies. Any degree of naivety in this regard, including the recognition of the empty promises and assurances of the mullahs and their representatives, or succumbing to political convenience instead of recognizing undeniable facts, will lead to disastrous consequences. Secretary Kerry has correctly said that all avenues leading to a nuclear-armed Iran must be closed through a comprehensive deal. One of those avenues explicitly cited by Secretary Kerry has been the path of secrecy and concealment of activities. So the question is, if the tests, projects, and institutions referred to here are not intended to serve as secretive means for pursuing a nuclear weapon, what other purpose could they possibly have? If the West is truly intent on ensuring and verifying that Iran would no longer have the capabilities to produce a nuclear weapon, then it would directly contradict the lenient and negligent approach that allows the regime to obtain an agreement without addressing numerous unresolved questions about the military dimensions of nuclear program. Instead of adopting a conciliatory policy, Western negotiators should compel the regime to officially accept the following set of conditions articulated by NCRI President-elect Maryam Rajavi. 1. Allowing unannounced and snap inspections of all declared and undeclared sites, military or otherwise. Allowing the IAEA to interview all nuclear experts or officials tied to nuclear projects. 3. Complete dismantling of Arak heavy water site, and then complete halt to nuclear enrichment, and finally unconditional implementation of UN Security Council resolutions. Now we must again warn of Tehran's intentions to firmly hold onto its nuclear program as a way of compensating for setbacks it had received in Iraq, including the ouster of Nur al-Maliki. Tehran seeks to exploit the current crisis in the region to either prolong the negotiations or to obtain more concessions in the nuclear arena and impose its condition on a final deal. The fact is that Kyrgyz regime's nuclear program is intertwined with policy of exporting terrorism abroad, as well as its barbaric human rights violations in Iran. Any concessions to the mullahs, under whatever pretext, including efforts to secure their cooperation in fight against the terrorist group ISIS, would only strengthen and embolden the Iranian regime's strategic ambitions and policies. Without much ado, now I ask my colleague, Ali Reza, share the specifics of today's information that we are revealing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone coming to our office, the Washington office of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Welcome. What I'm going to share today with you regarding the nuclear site in Parchin is basically the findings by the network inside Iran of the main Iranian opposition, the Mujahideen Khalq, about Parchin. And I think the revelations today, combined with the previously disclosed information, will provide a comprehensive picture about what Tehran is up to in Parchin and why Tehran has been denying access to Parchin. And so without further ado, let's start with this. This is just an overview of giving a picture of where the sites are, where Parchin is. This is a bigger picture of Parchin, about 30 kilometers southeast of Tehran. It's been a site that's been of interest to the international community for decades. Now, what we are able to confirm based on our sources inside Iran is that there are actually two explosive chambers, not one, two explosive chambers that were built by Azarab Industries, which is an affiliate of the an IRGC company known as Khatam al-Anbiya Garrison. And it's been a very secretive project. Only two persons at Azarab Industry had full knowledge of the project. As the IAEA has expressed concern already, one of the two chambers was installed at Parchin military complex in southeast Tehran by the Defense Ministry between 2000 and early 2001. And what we were able to identify, and this is one area they've been working on for almost 2 years, trying to figure out who is really running the show, who is calling the shots when it comes to Parchin and all the other activities, illicit activities they're doing regarding the nuclear weapons program. We have identified that person. That person is an officer of the IRGC, an engineer. His name is Saeed Borji. Saeed Borji. He is the main individual responsible for the design and installation of the explosive chamber. He is an engineer, but a confidant of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, who's known to everyone. We first exposed him many years ago, and he's known as the father of the nuclear weapons program of Iran. And Saeed Borji has been an officer of the IRGC since 1980. and he's married. He has a PhD in material and metallurgical engineering from Sharif University of Technology in Tehran. Now, he certainly is an explosive expert, and he is a former official of Center for Explosives, Blast Research and Technologies at METFAS. And METFAS itself is a subsidiary of CEPEN, and I will elaborate a little bit further on that. Now, this is a satellite imagery of METFAS, which we had exposed before. Now, the other aspect that we were able to identify accurately, there have been a lot of talks about a Ukrainian expert, Vycheslav Danilenko, and the name has been mentioned since 2011 by various sources. And we were able to confirm that actually the Ukrainian expert, Danilenko, was, not only he was in Iran at the time, but he was cooperating with the regime in the field of explosive impact. And he actually collaborated closely with Saeed Borji, both in the design and installation of the explosive chamber. His son-in-law, whose name was mentioned in the media before, we were able to confirm that Vladimir Padalko, who is the son-in-law of Danilenko, he was also in Iran at the time, not only there, but he too was involved in the explosive chamber project. And as you know, the explosive chamber is so significant for any nuclear weapons program because that's where they do the necessary tests. That's a necessary part of building the actual bomb. And short of doing a nuclear test, that's how they need to do all the tests and everything to get the expertise and get all the specifications they need for building the bomb. That's why the issue of explosive chambers has been of very high interest to the International Atomic Energy Agency and all the other countries who are concerned about this issue. Now, in terms of the installation of this explosive chamber in Parchin, we were able to confirm that both Danilenko and Borji were present at Parchin, and they supervised the installation of the chamber. No one from Azarab Industries was allowed into Parchin, even though this was the company that actually built the vessel, the chamber. Now, let me say a few words. Speaking of Azarab, the name was already mentioned. We know that we already knew that this was a company that built it, but I think it's so important to know the details, and especially will help the IAEA and others who are pursuing to know who they should go and interview, what parts of the program they need to look at. And this is the detail that we were able to ascertain regarding Azarab. Now, the design, as I mentioned earlier, the design of the two special explosive chambers at Parchin was actually completed by Danilenko under Borji's supervision. And after the completion of the design, Saeed Borji handed over the task of building these two reactors at Parchin to Azarab Industries. Now, the comprehensive information about the designs was provided only to 2 people at Azarab, no more. Even though they get a lot of people involved in building something this big, but only 2 people knew exactly what they're doing. One of them was Hashem Nizamabadi. He was the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the Azarab at the time, and he's an engineer, and he had full access to the full designs because he was the one who was tasking different departments, different engineers in building different parts, and then eventually they assembled and put them together. The other person is Valiullah Bagheri, the security head of Azarab, and he was given the designs for both chambers. Now, the Defense Ministry's point of contact with Hashim Nizamabadi, was a person called Derakhshande. And all materials that was used for building these two chambers were actually procured by the Defense Ministry because the required materials were actually dual purpose. Azarab could not have gotten it on its own, so it had to go through the Defense Ministry and the network, the resources they had to clandestinely obtain the dual purpose material. Now, Nizamabadi is actually now the CEO of another company called Pars Mineral Industries, which is an affiliate of John Bazan Foundation, again itself part of the, really run by the Defense Ministry. There were two engineers. One is Muhammad Sharif Soltani and Ghulam Hossein Katuzian. Both of them are engineers at Azarab, and each of them built parts of these chambers. These are people, the names that we mentioned today should be of interest to the IAEA to interview and get details about their level of involvement, and Iran should provide access not to the site but also to individuals. Soltani is now the deputy for the oil and gas of Azarab, and Katuzian is currently the chair of the company's factory in Iraq. That's where actually those chambers were built, in Iraq. They have a large facility in Iraq. Now, just a little note, the Azarab Industries was placed on the European Union sanctions list because there were speculations about their involvement in a whole host of activities, because they've been building and producing facilities for the different agencies of the Iranian regime, the Defense Ministry and others. And then what happened, the IRGC basically rebranded Azarab, which is part of their, really part of their own, as a private enterprise to circumvent sanctions. And it was privatized on January 13, 2012. Interestingly, the IRGC members became its shareholders. That's how you privatize an IRGC company. Now, the other entity we're going to talk about that not a whole lot has been known about the true nature of their activities is the Iranian Presidential Center for Innovation and Technology Cooperation, also known as CITC. It's an organization that was built put together about 30 years ago. Interestingly, around the time that the IRGC's nuclear research and activities started, that the coincidence is interesting. This organization has been tasked to circumvent international sanctions to obtain illicit information on the weapons of mass destruction, including the nuclear weapons program of Iran. They have been involved extensively in the Defense Ministry's nuclear activities when it comes to recruiting and employing experts from Russia, from Belarus, and from Ukraine. And it was this organization that was directly involved in recruiting Danilenko. Now, the new intelligence that the MEK has provided suggests that Danilenko's contract for cooperation with the regime was signed by CITC under the direct supervision of the head of this office, which was at the time Saeed Mohammad Reza Sajjadi. There are two individuals who should be of interest. One is Morteza Amirkhanian, who is the deputy chair of the office, and Saeed Hassan Emami, a consultant at the office. He's currently the deputy for energy at CITC, who was in charge of recruiting and accommodating the needs for basically foreign scientists. Now, both Amirkhanian and Emami have been in direct contact with Saeed Borji and Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. And they personally made arrangement These two individuals made arrangement for Danilenko's stay in Iran, including providing a travel visa. Now, in terms of Danilenko and his relationship with Iran, I know his name has come up on and off since 2011. And the world is trying to find out exactly what he was up to when he was in Iran. He actually had a very intimate relationship with Saeed Borji throughout his stay in Iran, throughout all the time from 1996 to around 2002 when he was in Iran. And as I mentioned earlier, together with Borji, it was Danilenko who actually designed the explosive chambers. And it's contrary to the Danilenko's claims that he said he was not directly involved in the explosive chamber projects, even though he conceded that some of the research and the work he had done may have been used by Iran, but he always denied any kind of direct involvement in anything related to these chambers. He was actually present in Parchin and supervised the installation and the operation. Now, you can imagine for someone like Saeed Borji, who was already himself an expert in explosives, how much he would gain expertise and experience from Danilenko both in the areas of nanodiamonds and explosive detonation and other aspects of the nuclear warhead manufacturing of the Iranian regime. Now, I want to say a few words about the role of a key organization which we first exposed in July 2011 right here in Washington, based on information from the NEK, the Organization of Defensive Innovation and Research, also known as SEPAND. That's the Farsi acronym for this organization. Now, the explosive chamber at Parchin is actually part of a project under the supervision of the Nuclear Weapons Division of Iran. It started as a physics research center and it evolved into FEDAT, and now it's called SEPAND. Mohsen Fakhrizadeh has headed this project ever since, and it shows that the chamber is part and parcel of the larger nuclear weapons program, larger weaponization program of Iran, something that the international community has been trying to ascertain more information and find ways to stop it. This is a picture of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. This is one of actually the only picture that has surfaced so far. It was exposed by the NEK last year, and the way Tehran has handled this, they have created a cover story. The cover story for this project has been, we're doing extensive research in the field of nanodiamonds, and Borji, because he has been teaching at Malik Ashdar University in the field of nanodiamonds and nanotechnology, he has been using that as a cover. And interestingly, it was the Defense Ministry that really started the actual research on nanodiamonds for the purposes they have, because it does have applications in the weaponization, and the technology could be very useful for multi-point projects that is needed for building a nuclear bomb. This is really a top secret program in the Defense Ministry. And as I mentioned, the research is now being conducted at the Malik Ashdar University and also the SEPAND. And interesting thing is that about Saeed Borji, we first exposed him in February 2008 in a press conference in Brussels. And this is part of what we put out at the time. I don't know if you can see properly from here, but this is one of the 12 different functions of the organization that was heading the nuclear research and technology at the time, known as FEDAT. And this later developed into a bigger entity known as SEPAND now. But as you can see, one of the 12 functions we exposed, it was nanodiamonds, centrifuge lubricant production headed by Saeed Borji. And then here again his name appears, explosion and high energy material, Ali Mehdi Pur Omrani and Saeed Borji. But it was not known what he, beyond what we exposed at the time, what he actually was doing, if any at all, regarding Parchin. This is the new information that we've managed to put out today, putting a totally new light and a new focus on Saeed Borji as the ultimate top nuclear expert of Iran related to those chambers and what Iran is doing in Parchin. Now, in in terms of employment of foreign experts, I think this is so important because there were some reports a few years ago that Tehran actually, there were some suggestions that Tehran actually abandoned its nuclear weaponization work in 2003, and they may have done some tests and some things before, but you know that has been sort of like discarded. But the information we're getting suggests otherwise. There are all kinds of indications showing that Tehran has been seeking foreign experts and employing and trying to find new ways to hide the program, create new covers and new front companies. You know, CITC I mentioned earlier, since 1990s they've been engaged in recruitment, both in Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, and they created a number of front companies. So just to give you a couple of examples, one of them is Advanced Materials Development. It's a front company that was that worked with Belarus. It started actually working with Belarus in 2006. This is way beyond 2003, and on nanodiamonds and building of explosive chambers under the supervision of Saeed Borji. Through its CEO, the CEO of Advanced Material Development was Maziar Zand. Now, then later on, a front company was jointly formed by the Advanced Material Development and a Belarus company named Sinta. It was headed by someone called Alexander Kozhnevsky, a very top expert on explosives in July of 2006. And 6 years later, the Belarus company left Apadana, and Borji was managing this whole project. Perhaps, maybe they're finding new covers, new means, but this is clearly showing within that period of 2006 to 2012 how this front company, which was really doing making some productions that were only used for cover. Now, another example is Arya Nano Pioneers. It's also known as Pishkaman Nano Arya. It's a company that was formed, and Borji, interestingly, became a board member. It was created in 2006, around the same time. And they actively sought contracts, but in reality, they never signed a single commercial deal. And apparently, the cover didn't prove fruitful, or maybe they had another gig. So Arya Nano Pioneers was disbanded in January of 2012. Now, the point of all of these things, if I want to wrap up, is that basically Tehran has been actively pursuing weaponization way into 2006, way into 2003, and has sought foreign expertise, companies, constantly changing cover to hide its nuclear weapons program. And when it comes to Parchin, there were two explosive chambers built, not one, by Azarab company, and the IRGC officer Saeed Borji is the main individual responsible for the design and installation of these chambers. And then we talked about Danilenko, who was in Iran at the time, collaborated closely with Saeed Borji in the design and installation of the explosive chamber. This is contrary to what he had claimed or the information that was available before. And his son-in-law, Vladimir Padalko, was also in Iran at the time. And not only there, but also involved in the project as well. And we also discussed today that Danilenko and Borji were present at Parchin when the installation of those chamber was taking place, and no one from Azarab was there given the security concerns they had. And we talked about the role of the CITC in hiring experts from Russia to Belarus to Ukraine, and how this organization was directly involved in the recruitment of Danilenko. And then we concluded that actually the explosive chamber at Parchin is part of the broader, bigger program of nuclear weaponization by the Iranian regime, headed by Sepan. This is part of the project under Sepan, and the whole thing is really headed by Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. I'd like to conclude here and open for any questions and answers. Questions, please. Please, yes. Please identify yourself, and if you were going to share the mic. Howard.
Howard LaFranchi.
Yes.
Okay. Howard LaFranchi, Christian Science Monitor. Just a clarification. You started out talking about that there were 2 explosive chambers that you verified, not just one, and then through the presentation sort of goes back and forth through discussing one. So I'm wondering what, first of all, is there a legitimate use for one chamber? Are you saying that one existed and one was hidden? So I'm just, looking for clarification on that.
Well, that's the key question. That's the $64,000 question that you raised, and I think this is the question that the IAEA and everyone else who's interested in this issue should take up right now and pursue it. We don't know where the other chamber is. It could be in another site where they are doing similar activities. It could be actually even in Parchin that we're not aware of it. That's a key thing. We know for sure, and this is one thing that we've been focusing on trying to verify. We know for sure that there were 2 such chambers built, and in response to your question, there's no other legitimate use for these chambers, especially if it's ordered by the organ, by the agency, Sepan, and those people who were involved with the first chamber, who were involved and interested in doing specific tests related to weaponization. So there's no benign use behind the second chamber. The question is, where is it and what are they doing with it now? Please, yes.
I'm with the Associated Press. Hi, Deb Riekman with Associated Press.
Yes.
I'm just curious about the time frame on this end. Some of this activity, you had, parameters for when things were started and when things ended. Are we to assume that the information that you provided is current, that it continued on, that this stuff is still going on?
Right.
Do you know what I'm asking?
Yes, absolutely. Very good question. Actually, the information we have, because one of the most important points of contention between the IAEA and the Iranian regime is what Iran has been doing in terms of weaponization, in terms of military application, in terms of some of the tests that they've been conducting way back, starting in the early 2000s. And Tehran had never responded to those questions. And the excuse Tehran had used was that, well, you were interested in Parchin, we allowed you in 2005, you came and inspected some parts, you didn't find anything, out of here, we're not going to let you back there. What we try to portray here is that based on the information we have, and this is the research that we have done through our sources dating back to 2 years ago, starting about 2012, and continuing until just a few days ago. So this is very current to the information we have. Now, what they are doing exactly as we speak right now in Parchin is a very good question that I think, given the track record, there is a high possibility that they are even more heavily involved in what they've been doing. Once you build those chambers, once you build those facilities, once you hire those experts, when you develop the level of expertise, you want it for a purpose. And unless they change their mind, and you would know if Tehran had changed its mind, because like other countries, they would have come up, they would have coughed up and say, okay, this is what we were doing, we have stopped it. This is the kind of research we're doing, we stopped it. You want to come and see? You're welcome. Come and see, look at Parchin. Wherever you want to go, we'll take you there. This is not the approach Tehran has been taking. The entire nuclear infrastructure of the Iran regime has remained intact. All the top experts who were involved in the weaponization, and the IAEA has reasons to believe that they were involved, and they've been interested in interviewing them. Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, we mentioned his name about a decade ago. And the IAEA, one of the very first persons the IAEA was interested in interviewing was Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. Where is he? Why he's not provided an opportunity to be interviewed by the IAEA? And then, the names that we mentioned here, there were other names we had mentioned before. The IAEA has had no success in doing that. I think what Mr. Almano said, the Secretary General of the Director General of the IAEA, just a few days ago, at the remarks he had at the Brookings Institute, is very telling. He's basically saying that we're not getting anywhere. We can't get answers to the questions. These are key questions. These are not just, side questions. These are questions, outstanding questions, that get to the core of the nuclear program of Iran. That's weaponization. That's why actually Iran's file was referred to the UN Security Council to begin with in 2006, because Iran was not responding to it. And to date, after all these negotiations, all these talks, Tehran is as adamant as they were in not responding to those questions. So I think the best way to answer this is for Iran to open doors to Parchin and allow the international inspectors to see for themselves. If none of these things are taking place right now, there's an easy way to negate it. Please.
Thank you. Laura Curran with CNN. Two questions. First, is this based exclusively on witness statements from sources, or is this something that you have documents or photographic evidence to back up? And then secondly, you said that the installation of this second explosive chamber was conducted between 2000 and 2001. Is this not something that came up in the 2005 IAEA inspection? Is it something that you're saying they actively concealed at that time?
Right. Well, I mentioned about the first chamber installation. If that's what you meant. I did not say that the second chamber was installed, but the first installation was 2001. It did not come during the 2005 visit of the IAEA, because at that time this information was not known. No one knew anything about the chamber, nor was this information credibly available to the IAEA, so they had really never asked about this, or to go to certain areas that they thought that this would be there. So even though the chamber was there, the IAEA never went there. And remember, Parchin is huge. It's not just like one simple site that you walk in. You're talking about kilometers by kilometers. And it's been there for 40, 50 years. And they have all kinds of facilities, test areas, and just taking the IAEA to certain buildings, will not do it. And responding to the first part of your question, the information is all based on the sources with actual knowledge about this, people within the Iranian regime, within the Revolutionary Guards, the Sepand organization, Medfaz, and all the other sources that have, are involved in the project. So this is reliable information. Otherwise, we would not come up and share it. This is, some part of it we have had it for a while, but we were not sure. We're trying to verify it with other sources. What we share with you is absolutely accurate based on the sources who have been proven accurate in the past. And just a reminder, the nuclear sites in Natanz and Iraq were first exposed by the very same movement, the MEK in 2002. That triggered the IAEA inspection of all the nuclear sites of Iran. The site in Fordo was exposed by the MEK in 2005. The Lavizan Shian, the Karaj, Hashkirt site, the site in Mojde, Sepand, a whole host of nuclear sites and activities were exposed accurately. Please, yes, sorry.
Thanks. I'm Indira Lakshman from Bloomberg News. So
yes.
Following up on that, all of these people you're saying who are your sources are people within the Iranian regime, if I understand it correctly.
Absolutely correct.
And some of them are the same Iranian regime sources who gave you information about Natanz, Iraq, etc.
Some
of the same people.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have information from any outside foreign intelligence agencies? Have you shared this information with American intelligence or Israeli intelligence or anyone else? And what is their opinion of this? What is the U.S. government?
Sure. We have not used any foreign sources, outside sources, any of that. As I said earlier, the information comes strictly from the network of the MEK inside Iran, who gets its information from a whole host of sources, all of them within Iran and within the Iranian regime. As far as sharing it with the U.S. government and the agencies, this information was shared as soon as we had it very recently, shared both with the United States government and also with the International Atomic Energy Agency.
And did they make any comment on it?
No, we haven't gotten any comment yet, but it was pretty recent.
When was it?
Within the past couple of days.
Have you shared it with intelligence agencies or the State
No,
Department?
as I said, the U.S. government.
But who in the U.S. government? Which?
Well, I can't say that. It's not too far from here. Please.
Hi, John Hudson with Foreign Policy. As you know, a number of Iranian nuclear scientists have been killed, and some reports have pointed to the MEK. Do you reject that? And if so, who do you think is behind some of those killings? Of Iranian nuclear scientists involved in Iran's nuclear program?
Well, the MEK has said that they were not involved in the killing of the nuclear scientists, and that's not the practice they use. And we don't know who was behind it, and who knows, what's happening internally, or what other factors play a role. But we simply don't have any information on exactly who did it. Any other questions? Please. Yes. Howard.
If I could just ask about timing of this or release of this information. Was it purely because, you got information that you wanted to get out, and your investigations were pretty much concluded, or is there any connection to the the November 24th? Or are you trying to have any impact on the P5+1 talks with Iran and concluding some kind of deal?
Well, certainly what I can say, and if you want to add something, in terms of the information, this has been the practice of this movement, that anytime the information becomes available, we just provide that information when we have it. And there have been all kinds of rounds of negotiations, and we just didn't have anything to really release. So this is really purely related to the information itself. However, whether do we have any intentions of stopping Iran from getting the bomb? Absolutely. This is the agenda of the Iranian resistance, to prevent Iran from getting the bomb. And I think the purpose of these negotiations, at least the stated purpose of these negotiations, has been to prevent Iran from getting the bomb, prevent Iran from getting the ability to get access to nuclear weapons. So I think, in a way, this should prove to be actually beneficial to whoever is involved in the negotiations, because this will add more facts that they can present and ask to be resolved. So I think for the purpose of the talks, let's just keep our eyes focused on what the purpose is supposed to be, to prevent Iran from getting the bomb. That's what we agree with, and that's what we've been trying to do. That's what we were in the forefront of it since 2002, exposing those sites. Yes, we proudly take credit for getting the IAEA to go to Iran and inspect those sites after our revelations, and we take credit for everything we've put out that has gotten the international community focused on putting pressure on Iran to abandon their program. Please, Professor Tanter.
Raymond Tanter, the Iran Policy Committee Publishing. Could you say something about the terrain, the mountainous area, the tunnels, and other aspects that make it difficult for the IAEA and for foreign intelligence to penetrate?
Well, sure. We have been putting out a lot of information about the tunneling in Iran and how it's tied to the nuclear weapons program of Iran. I refer you to a front page story in the New York Times in January 2005 that, based on our information, they had an extensive reporting about this. We had several specific press conferences on the tunnelings in Khojair area, which is not too far from Parchin. And in Parchin itself, there's a lot of facilities underground that Tehran has been hiding all kinds of research and activities. But one thing in question is that the problem now is not that they get access but they just can't find it. The problem is that the access has been denied, period. And Tehran has said, the defense minister of the regime has said that we're not going to provide access to Parchin. So once they get access, I think things will be different. They have a lot more information now than they had in 2005 to know where to look for and what to pay attention. So okay, I guess one more last question, please, and then you.
So as I understood, the concern over the initial chamber was that it could have been used for testing triggers, which would advance the weaponization of the weaponization component of Iran's nuclear program.
Right.
So is your primary concern over a second chamber is that the advancement of the weaponization of Iran's nuclear program could be further than anyone realized because there's been this second chamber that has existed?
Well, you can basically speculate. I don't want to speculate here because I want to deal with the facts. But if you want to speculate, I mean, the very concern anyone would have, and I think the IAEA should have, is that, what happened to that second chamber? If Iran is so adamantly denying access to this very first chamber that the whole world has been talking about, then what has happened to the second one? And is that possible that somehow they can do some cleanup and allow eventually some people to come and access Parchin, but in fact the real thing is actually somewhere else? The whole host of things you can speculate. But I think this is something that the IAEA should immediately ask Iran to clarify on this. I know they didn't respond to the first chamber either, but at least you have two issues now, one additional issue to pursue and follow. I think they can use that during their interviews, the people they're interviewing, some of these foreign experts, some of the names that we mentioned. That could be an important source. I think you will get the very last.
Do you have any comments about President Obama's letter to the Supreme Leader that was reported about on yesterday?
Do you want to? Yes.
Well, obviously, there would be no peace with honor with this criminal and medieval regime. I'm reminded of Sir Winston Churchill's famous remark that said, "You will have war and dishonor." No doubt such an outreach lends legitimacy to a regime which has executed 120,000 people on political charges over the past 35 years, the largest number of political killing post-World War II by any state. Certainly, President Obama didn't ask Khamenei about the execution of more than 1,000 hangings since Rouhani took office last year, including that of 26-year-old interior designer Rehani Jabbari, and the wave of government-organized acid attacks on dozens of women in Isfahan, Tehran, and all other cities around Iran, turning a blind eye to the atrocities on this regime at home and its export of terrorism abroad would only embolden the mullahs to continue their pursuit of a nuclear bomb.
Okay.
Questions?
I'll wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much today for joining us, and I think Ali, my colleague, will distribute the text of the press conference today, so if you have questions about the spelling, names, and further questions, we're available to continue with them. Thank you very much for joining us today. Have a good day.